my partner for putting together our plan today, and for the opposition for putting on a good debate, and thank you to the judge for being present to judge our debate this afternoon, and of course for our Latino gallery for listening. The resolution today is the endorsement of political candidates by clergy in the United States should be allowed without loss of nonprofit status. I'll just give you a couple of different definitions. By endorsement, we mean to support publicly, specifically in this case at the pulpit. Political candidates, we all know, would be anyone running for elected office. Clergy would be our religious officials or leaders. Should implies that an action is to be taken. Allowed is to permit something to happen. And specifically when it comes to the loss of nonprofit, without the loss of nonprofit status, we're referring to the IRS's exemption, a taxation exemption for churches that currently exists. And criteria is the democratic process will be increased. So our plan basically is to have the IRS repeal the 1954 ban, which basically ties freedom of speech to taxation, basically allowing churches to receive tax exemption from the IRS, but only if they refrain from speaking or endorsing a political candidate at the pulpit. The agent of action then would be the IRS, and enforcement would be through normal means. The background, basically, I touched upon is that since the 1950s, there's been somewhat of a ban, you might say, on religious leaders being able to speak at the pulpit and endorsing a political candidate. So they can discuss issues of social significance, like, say, abortion or other general topicalities. But if it comes to actually endorsing a candidate, they're prohibited from doing so. And if they do so, they lose their tax exemption from the IRS. Did you have a question?
Yes. You planned that. Could you repeat your mandate, please?
Yeah, the mandate would be for the IRS to repeal the 1954 ban. So basically, churches would remain tax exempt, but they would not be prohibited from endorsing a candidate in their church if they wanted to.
Thank you. Could you also explain your criteria, how it would work?
The criteria, yeah, I'm going to actually go into that quite a bit, but basically the criteria is that the plan increases the democratic process, and I'll be more specific about that shortly. So basically, the government's argument is that political candidates ultimately will become our elected officials, and they will legislate issues that cross into the religious realm, like abortion or assisted suicide, the teaching of social issues to minors, etc. So the clergy is compelled to present its view on all of these issues and about the elected officials because they feel that it is their job to shepherd their flock, that their congregation looks to them for guidance. So we have four advantages. Basically, the advantage number one would be that the ban that the IRS put on the churches infringes on the individual clergy's First Amendment rights by penalizing the church. So while these clergy members are members of a church, they're also individual American taxpayers, and they have a right to the freedom of speech, but they're being silenced. They are prohibited from endorsing a candidate in the way that you and I might have that discussion with our friends and neighbors or co-workers or whatever. And then if they do speak out, their church is then penalized because they now lose their tax exemption. So the impact would be that this would actually reinstate the First Amendment for the clergy. Advantage number two is that we believe that lifting the ban will make the church more modern because it can now discuss contemporary issues. And that will appeal to the average person who will actually, we believe, will increase church going because people will feel that this is a modern place where they can actually discuss current relevant social issues and not a place where you're silenced. So the impact of this is that we'll have a society that is more church-going, more moral, and potentially less criminal in their behavior. Advantage number three would be that voters who feel that they are more informed and more part of the participation of the democratic process are more likely to vote. So this again speaking to the POI regarding the criteria, is that if you feel more informed about issues because you have now a venue to discuss not just the social issues, but how elected or political candidates will affect issues that matter to you, you'll feel more likely to participate and to vote because you now have a voice, you have this education behind you that the church has provided. And advantage number four is that candidates will have to listen to this demographic, that it will no longer be irrelevant that religious people who attend church regardless of their faith, have a right to to cast their vote in favor of politicians who support their social views, and this will affect how elections are run, and political candidates will have to start paying attention to this demographic. So basically, we've given you 4 strong advantages, and then really, there's really little cost. It basically is simply permitting the clergy to have a right that every other American has a right to, which is the freedom of speech. So I think for these reasons, we've earned your vote today. Thank you.